I want to also just go back and talk a little bit about things that parents can do to help their young people that aren't necessarily mentally health based in terms of professional mental health services, but which make a massive contribution to young people's well-being. Now, sobriety is the most important thing. Try to keep young people away from alcohol and drugs for as long as you possibly can. Making certain that they do, if they are prescribed medications or therapy, that they do take those and continue with that for as long as possible. And the longer they continue with those, the better their outcome is likely to be. Bearing in mind that the risk of suicidal behaviour may persist even after a crisis is resolved. So the longer therapy and medication are continued, the better in that respect. So support them in that. The other thing that can often be very powerful with young people is motivational interviewing. Often just one session of motivational interviewing with young people can be very important. Another thing is encouraging positive affect, which is different from treating depression. It's different neural circuitry in the brain. So encouraging positive affect is encouraging gratitude activities, for example. So if you're around the dinner table, just getting into the habit, the daily habit, as a family of, all right, while we're waiting for dinner to be served, what's 3 things that you're grateful for today? Gratitude is incredibly powerful. There's research that shows that if people write a letter thanking people for what they've done to help them, even it lights up the positive aspects of your brain. And even if they don't actually send that letter, 12 months down the line, if you compare people who wrote a letter of thanks with people who didn't write a letter of thanks, the ones who wrote the letter of thanks, didn't even send it, actually are doing better. And people need to understand that actually thanking people has a very, very powerful effect. So trying to integrate those sorts of activities is important. There's a couple of other things. I'm really keen on these things. Family or non-parental support. There are some families that have difficulty and struggle in supporting a young person who's got problems. And there's really good evidence, research evidence now, that's quite amazing, that shows that if you can engage someone outside the family at the age of 13, 14 or even later, when young people may be having problems, and it's called a youth-nominated support person. So the young person decides who they want to support them if their parents are having difficulty doing so. So it may be a grandparent, maybe an aunt, maybe a school teacher who takes a particular interest in them, maybe a sports coach, someone like that. Then if they spend a session with a counsellor and just get some tips on how to support this young person, it's amazing. But 20 years down the line, when these people are approaching 30, they have had a better mental health outcome, fewer suicidal behaviours than young people with similar problems who did not have a youth-nominated support person. So that's very important. The other thing is getting young people out in nature. There is a nature therapy, a nature cure. It's very important. Bear in mind that young people these days tend to spend a lot of time on social media. And this has happened in the space of a generation. We were born to be hunter-gatherers, and we were not born to spend 12, 14 hours seated in front of a screen, an iPad, a phone, or a television screen. And physical activity and getting out in nature is really incredibly important, so encouraging that. We know that physical activity improves your mood. It really does make a big difference. We're really concerned about young people these days because of the time that they spend on social media. It means that they are simply they're sacrificing time that they would have previously spent in physical activity. And it's got big impact. So in my local region, for example, the swimming instructors who are teaching 5 and 6-year-olds to swim say that they no longer have the upper arm strength that 5 and 6-year-olds had 5 or 10 years ago, because they're not outside climbing trees and on jungle gyms. And we know that young people have lost core physical strength that we would expect them to have at the age of 9 or 10 or 14 or 15, because they're not outside and doing physical activity. This basically comes back to what I call really emphasising the foundation health habits with young people, and that's part of parental responsibilities, to try and encourage young people and make certain that they do understand what I call the foundation health habits. 6 foundation health habits are. So the first one is sleep, and again that's really important with young people. They need a good 9 hours, 8 to 10 on average, 9 hours sleep. And there's research evidence that shows that young people who go to schools that take account of that, their need for more sleep, and start the school at 9:30 in the morning, those young people do better than the ones who have to get out of bed at 6:30 to catch the school bus to start school at 8:30, for example. So sleep is critically important. Young people these days often allow their sleep to be disrupted by phones. So bottom line is they should not be sleeping with their phone. The blue light stimulates them, it keeps them awake. Disrupted sleep is really a significant contributor to suicidal behaviours. Most people who make serious suicide attempts or die by suicide have had significantly disrupted sleep in the week before they make their suicide attempt. And the research evidence is that if you have one night's disrupted sleep, you perform 20% below your optimal level the next day. You have 2, 3, 4, 5 nights disrupted sleep, you are in no space to solve your problems and think clearly about what the solutions might be to the problems that you're having. So the first one is sleep. Sleep is not a luxury, sleep's an absolute essential. The second foundation health habit is exercise, getting outside and exercising. Exercise will improve people's mood. The third one is what I call nourish and hydrate. So eat good food, not too much, and mostly plant-based. And very often people don't recognise that a glass of water may actually make them feel better. They don't recognise that they're dehydrated. The other major health habit is nature, which I talked about, getting outside in nature. Stress management, knowing what works for you to decrease and minimise your stress. And that's important in the era of COVID, because life's actually got a lot more stressful for many people over the last couple of years. So having a good self-care plan for young people as well as their parents, knowing when I'm distressed, knowing what works for me to decrease the stress levels. And we can help people develop self-care plans and suicide self-care plans for people when they're feeling suicidal. They're the same basic plan, and we now actually have a New Zealand phone app which is a suicide safety plan. And that resource is available to people. We can help you structure that and help young people develop that, and then it's on their phone. They go nowhere without their phone, so their suicide safety plan is always on their phone. The last foundation health habit is social connections, and it's incredibly powerful. So just sending text messages saying, remember that we care about you, remember we're always here for you, those sorts of things are really, really important. But those 6 foundation health habits are important for parents who are looking after young people as well.